Now,
Well, welcome everybody to the Yoga Philosophy discussion group, or you might call it the Yoga Philosophy Book Club discussion group, coming to you from the Yoga Center of Chico. I'm Lauren Carley, and with me is Tom Hess on the big screen, on the main screen. He is a co-owner of the Yoga Center of Chico. In this series, we are currently studying and reading Light on Life by Mr. B.K.S. Iyengar and how it relates to your life. Today, we're talking about chapter 1, the inward journey. I love this stuff, which I will summarize, and then Tom will add his thoughts on it. Each month, we discuss a different chapter. Each month, a chapter is recorded like this that you're watching right now. And all of these recordings can be found on the Yoga Center of Chico's YouTube page, or YouTube channel. And then each month, the fourth Thursday of every month at 5:30 to 7, we have a live discussion at the YCC. And we also open up a live Zoom link for you to participate. If you want more information, you want to be added to the mailing list, go to the Yoga Center of Chico for our contact information. The Zoom link to the live session is also found there. And now we'll start introducing chapter 1, the inward journey. So chapter 1 is power packed. Mr. Iyengar in chapter 1 lays the foundation for the inner journey. There's a lot to it. And I will walk you through the chapter at kind of the high conceptual level. And we'll talk about some parts of the chapter. And what might help you if you're a visual person is what I did. There's the book. Thank you, Tom. There's the book. I'm going to hold it up, but then Tom will hold it up. Is in order to keep track of everything that is in this packed chapter, I mapped it out because that's what I like to do. And it occurred to me a while ago, that's Tom's holding it up. Thank you, Tom. That the map out that I did for myself to keep my mind straight might be helpful to some people watching this. So let's take a look at the book. Chapter 1, the first paragraph. One of the things I like about this book is it's written really well. The first paragraph of the chapter says a summary of what Meister Iyengar is thinking, and I want to read it. He says, spiritual realization is the aim that exists in each one of us. Spiritual realization is the aim that exists in each one of us to seek our divine core. That core, though never absent from anyone, remains latent in us. It is not an outward journey for a holy grail that lies beyond, but an inward journey to allow the inner core to reveal itself. So keep that in mind for the end of this chapter. And then paragraph 2, nice and neat, ready for us to read. He talks about how to conduct yourself into the inward journey, how to follow the inward journey. He says, in order to find out how to reveal our innermost being, the sages explored the various sheaths of existence, which we're going to call koshas, starting from the body and progressing through the mind and the intelligence and ultimately to the soul. The yogic journey guides us from our periphery, the body, to the center of our being, the soul. The aim is to integrate the various layers so that the inner divinity shines out as though through clear glass. This right here in these 2 paragraphs is what it's all about. But let's dig into the details. And so what I did with my little mapping visual is I took the koshas and I labeled them across the top. You may not, thanks, Tom. You may not be able to read that, but there's the 5 koshas across the top. Where's my chart? Here we go. I'll look at my cheat sheet. And starting with the Annamaya kosha, then the Pranamaya kosha, the Manamaya Kosha, the Yanamaya Kosha, and the Ananda Maya Kosha. And you might keep in mind what the word Maya means. It's the veil that covers the true nature of existence, is a short way to say it. We could talk for hours about what Maya means, but if we say the Annamaya Kosha, it's the exterior part of the body as it appears to us. So page 4 through, I'll say 6.5, introduces us to these koshas, these, as he says, sheaths of being. And I just named the koshas and I labeled them across the top of our chart. And I want to point out that in pages 4 through 6, this is what he says at a higher conceptual level about the dealing with the koshas and traveling through them. He says integration and balance in the koshas. We try to achieve integration and balance. Yoga is concerned with this fusion of nature and soul because this is the essence of human life. And he also says that traveling on this inward journey from the Annamaya Kosha towards the Anandamaya Kosha, it really goes both ways. The inner koshas support the outer, and the outer point to the inward. And of course, these are conceptual. This is a model for trying to understand our inward self. And if you travel anywhere beyond the Anandamaya Kosha, you start getting the sense of what these are about. It takes the practice. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. There's no hard boundaries between them, like I'm showing on the chart. And the aim, as he says, is really to find integration and balance among all of them. But I can say, at least from my own experience, it is a journey the first time to go all the way in and then come all the way out. And one of the things that's nice about Tom's teaching of asana and pranayama is that he understands these koshas and he brings these out in the classes. So that's just me talking and throwing that out. On page 6.5 to 8, Mr. Iyengar talks about the concept he likes to say as living between earth and sky. And he says, living between earth and sky, imagine that the compass is ourself. In other words, we have the feet on the ground. When he says sky, what he's really talking about is our mind going towards our soul. The sky representing, you might say, a concept of heaven or internal. The compass is ourself. So we are able to infer that there is a universal reality in ourselves that aligns us with a universal reality that is everywhere. That's a way of seeing how we live between earth and sky. I love the asana Tadasana because it works, you might say, from the waist down and the feet up as you root down into the earth, and then from the waist up to the top of the head as you lift up to the sky. We can use this concept of living between earth and sky in Tadasana. The next time you practice it, think about that. But that's just an introduction. The earth and sky concept is just an introduction to what he really wants to talk about on page 9 and 10, and that is Purusha and Prakriti. Purusha representing in English the concept of a soul, and Prakriti representing in English a concept of nature. And on our chart that Tom's holding up, I wrote down in the upper left-hand corner, earth, in the bottom right-hand corner, sky. This is a, you might say, a graphic of living between earth and sky. Now, we're not done describing this graphic, so let's keep going here. Mr. Iyengar says, the whole practice of yoga is concerned with exploring the relationship between Purusha and Prakriti. The whole practice of yoga is concerned with exploring the relationship between Purusha and Prakriti. Another term for Purusha, it's a little bit hard to grasp. And there's a lot of debate I've seen in yoga world among some of the best minds still what exactly is Purusha, but abiding reality is another way to look at it. So there's two terms in addition to the idea of the koshas. Now let's add another one that he presents in this chapter. And that is on page from 10 to page 18 and a half. He talks about the 8 petals of yoga. You've probably heard of them as the 8 limbs of yoga, if we're talking about the same thing. And I don't sure where exactly these first show up, but they first show up, as far as I know, in the Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. That's where most people encounter them the first time. So down the left-hand column are the 8 petals of yoga. As you go down through this, so the yamas, the niyamas, asanas, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. So this is not the place in this summary to get into the details of each one. There's plenty of material out there, including this book, that you can use to get into the details. One of the ways I like to look at it is if you take your hand. So I asked myself, well, it's interesting that there's 8 petals, and he likes to just use the word petal rather than limb, because it's as if there's a lotus flower and your soul is sitting in the middle. Well, there's 10 fingers. Most of us have 10 fingers, but there's only 8 limbs. Well, what I discovered was if I put my hands together and my 2 little fingers together and my thumbs together, now I have 8 petals. So you can count them around your hands. The thumbs count as 1, the little fingers count as 1. And I'm sure there's some kind of a mudra that Amy Ford can tell me that there's a name for that. But it's a way, another physical or visual way of keeping these in mind, because all 8 petals, you end up, just like with the koshas, once you get around and experiment and play and experience, embodied experience these petals, you realize they're all in play all at the same time. Now, I drew them out linearly for a reason. And what he says is progressive, the 8 petals of yoga progressively revealed to the practitioner. It's Mr. Iyengar's term for it, progressively revealed to the practitioner. And then he goes on in this same section. We are going to try to use asana to sculpt the mind. I love that. To me, it just smacks of where I am in my yoga practice. Use asana to sculpt the mind. And find out what each kosha longs for. And then let's see here on page 17, as you move inward, interesting language for the kosha model. Mr. Iyengar says at the point he wrote this book, my asana is meditative. My practice of pranayama is devotional. Meditation itself is the final conquest and dissolution of the ego, the false self, which impersonates the real self. Once duality is reconciled and transcended, by the grace of God, the supreme gift of samadhi may be granted. Interesting words for describing, which is what he's doing in this chapter, is trying to lay out the foundation for us to describe the inward journey. And on the graphic that Tom's holding up, what you see here, in a sense, is that diagonal going from upper left to lower right of the inward journey. So as you're going through your sadhana, your yoga practice, you start with the Annamaya kosha, you start with the external world, which is the yamas, niyamas, and asanas. In our culture today, we emphasize the asanas and pranayama. And as you get into the pranamaya kosha and you go down and you start practicing these other practices, it looks like this. There's essentially a vector or an arrow that goes from upper left of Earth down to lower right sky. And as we know in yoga, it's not linear, it's actually cyclic. It goes around in a circle. So I think, Todd, that'd be good to, you want to lower that now?
Yeah, sure.
I'll be making this available to everybody that's on the mailing list. I'll send it to everybody and we'll have handouts in the room. So let me wrap up. One of the other things on page 18 and 19 that Mr. Iyengar says is learning to live with, one of the aspects of yoga is learning to live with the natural world. He says, before beginning this journey, we must clarify its nature, which is what he's been doing for us in chapter 1. There's a lot packed in here, and you can easily go down rabbit holes on each one of these points, the points of kosha, the points of Purusha Prakriti, the 8 limbs of yoga. There's whole probably month-long classes on each one of these. But to summarize, where I think what he's really trying to tell us on this journey is this, and I absolutely love this. And this has to do back to, I think, my interpretation is the koshas. He says on page 18, going on this yogic journey, the inward journey he's describing here in chapter 1, he said, if you clean your own house, if you clean your own house, you might notice divinity has been sitting there all along. So yes, it's a journey, it's a practice, it's doing. But what this says to me, it is also as much a way of seeing. A way of seeing. If you clean your own house often enough, you might find out that divinity's been sitting there all along. You just didn't see it. With that, let me turn it over to Tom for his comments.
Well, thank you, Lauren. Very fine representation of the chapter. I don't have a whole lot to add except a couple of points that I'd like to sort of illuminate. Like this idea that this whole practice can change from chaos into order. The practices here are designed to sort of change a fragmented life, a fragmented existence represented by the chaos to a state of order and control and intelligence. There's a couple of quotes that I really dug a lot about here, and Lauren touched on it a little bit, but it's too important. I'm quoting here: spirituality is not some external goal that one must seek, but a part of the divine core within each of us, which we must reveal. It's like Lauren mentioned about the compass and the north. The spirituality, the soul, Purusha, is that northern star out there, that northern existence, the northern pole. And we're individual compasses. But within each of us, there's a little pointer towards this goal of ultimate spirituality. And that pointer is pointing inside. And that's the journey that Mr. Iyengar is going to take us on through the rest of this book. And we're going to be exploring the koshas as described by Lauren, 8 limbs of yoga, Purusha Prakriti, how they all interrelate to one another, and how we can use them for this inner spiritual journey that we're all on. You're on it, or you wouldn't be listening to me right now. So I thought it was a wonderful explanation by Lauren, and I look forward to participating in the rest of the book with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. And I might say from my own experience that I've lost track of how many times I've read this book, but every time I read it, I see something different out of it, something different stands out. So what we're doing here is we're pulling out the things from our experience with this book. You might read the book and something else stands out to you. So just know that you can go through it and go through it and go through it, and every time a new way of seeing comes out of it. Right, with that.
Okay, just one quick note,
Go ahead, Tom.
I firmly believe that if you look in the pantheon of spiritual texts that we have that's come down through the centuries, this text written in our lifetimes will continue on and be a spiritual light for so many people going forward. So it's an important text. That's why we're doing it. Thank you, Lord.
Yeah, and I believe the same thing. I've come to that same conclusion on my own too, that this is a foundational text. All right.
Okay.
Ready to turn off the recording?
Okay. Thanks.